$100,000. That is what the average American household has saved by their mid-40s. And at some point, most people with that kind of money think the same thing. Maybe it is time to get a professional involved. So they call a financial advisor. They sit down. The advisor is calm, confident, well-dressed. They talk about goals, retirement, college funds, risk tolerance. It feels reassuring. Then comes the fee. 1% of assets under management per year sounds almost nothing. 1%. On $100,000, that is $1,000 in year one. You barely notice it, but let us actually follow that $1,000 because it does not stay $1,000. If your portfolio grows at 7% annually, that $1,000 you paid in fees would have become about $7,600 by the time you retire 30 years later. That is the cost of 1% in one single year. Now multiply that across every year. The standard estimate is that a 1% annual advisory fee costs you somewhere between 20 and 30% of your total portfolio over 30 years. On a portfolio that grows to $500,000, that is roughly $100,000 to $150,000 gone. Not to bad investments, to fees. Now, where does that money actually go when it leaves your account each year? First stop, the advisor's payout. Most advisors at large firms keep somewhere between 30 and 50% of the fee they charge you. The rest flows up to the firm itself to pay for the office, the compliance department, the brand, the marketing. That is not a scandal. That is just how a business works. But it means the person sitting across from you has a revenue model, not just a calling. Now here is where it gets more interesting. Many advisors do not just charge you a management fee, they also earn commissions on the products they sell you. Mutual funds, annuities, insurance products. This is called commission-based compensation, and it creates a very obvious conflict of interest. An advisor who earns more by selling you a high-commission product has a financial reason to recommend that product, whether or not it is the best option for you. The financial industry has known this for decades. The regulatory debate over it has been going on since at least the 1980s. There is a legal standard called fiduciary duty. A fiduciary is legally required to act in your best interest. Not all advisors are fiduciaries. Many operate under a lower standard called suitability, meaning the product only has to be suitable for you, not optimal. Suitable is a very low bar. A product can be suitable and still cost you significantly more than its alternatives. This is the second layer of hidden cost, not just the advisory fee, but the expense ratios inside the funds your advisor puts you in. Actively managed mutual funds, which advisors frequently recommend, carry average expense ratios of around 1.05% per year. Compare that to a basic index fund, which can cost as little as 0.03% annually. That is a difference of more than 1 full percentage point every single year. So now you are potentially paying 1% to the advisor and another full percent inside the fund itself. 2% annually. That does not sound terrifying until you see what it does to a portfolio over time. A portfolio earning 7% minus 2% in fees nets 5%. Over 30 years, $100,000 at 7% becomes $760,000. At 5%, that same money grows to only $430,000. The difference is $330,000. That is not the advisor's salary. That is compound growth you never received. Money that existed in theory and then was redirected. At this point, you might be thinking, okay, but surely the advisor earns it back in better returns. This is the assumption the entire industry runs on, and the data is not kind to it. S&P Global publishes something called the SPIVA scorecard every year. It tracks how actively managed funds perform versus their benchmark index. Over a 10-year period, roughly 85 to 90% of actively managed large cap funds underperform the S&P 500. Over 15 years, that number climbs to around 92%. The longer the time frame, the worse active management looks. And remember, those are pre-fee returns. After subtracting the advisor fee and the fund expense ratio, the odds get even worse. So the advisor is charging you to manage a fund that has an 8 in 10 chance of giving you worse results than just doing nothing and buying an index. The industry's defense is that advisors provide value beyond investment selection. Behavioral coaching, tax planning, estate work, and honestly, some of that is real. The behavioral piece especially. Studies suggest investors who panic sell in market downturns can lose far more than the advisory fee costs. Vanguard has actually quantified this. They call it advisors alpha. Their estimate is that a good advisor can add about 3% per year in net value through behavioral guidance and planning. But that 3% is only captured in specific moments: market crashes, major life decisions, inheritance events, not steadily every quarter forever. Which means for a 40-year-old in a stable job with a simple 3-fund portfolio who does not panic, the advisor's behavioral value may literally never be triggered. You are paying for insurance against a panic you might never have. That could still be worth it, but you should know what you are paying for. Now let us follow the money one more layer down, because beyond the AUM fee and the fund expenses, there is a third current running underneath: revenue sharing. Some fund companies pay the brokerage platforms that list their funds a portion of the expense ratio. This is sometimes called a 12B1 fee. These fees are legal. They are disclosed, technically buried in a fund prospectus that essentially nobody reads. When a platform earns more by listing Fund A over Fund B, guess which fund tends to get recommended more often? This is not unique to shady corners of the industry. In 2019, the SEC charged Edward Jones with failing to disclose nearly $4 billion in revenue sharing arrangements, not $4 million. $4 billion. That is not an outlier story. That is a structural feature of how the distribution system works. So when you hand over that 1%, it is not just going to one place, it fans out. The advisor, the firm, the fund company, the platform, everyone gets a slice. Meanwhile, back in your account, the number just quietly grows a little slower than it should, and you would not necessarily know, because the fee is deducted directly from the account, not billed as a separate invoice you have to approve. Research has consistently shown that investors dramatically underestimate how much they pay in fees because they never see the transaction. The money just is not there. A 2011 TIAA-CREF study found that only 27% of investors could correctly identify their fund's expense ratio. Most guessed less than a quarter of the actual cost. That opacity is not accidental. Complexity protects revenue. Now here is the part where fairness requires a different view. Not everyone who hires an advisor is being ripped off. There is a real category of person for whom an advisor provides unambiguous value. Someone with a complex estate, a business owner facing a liquidity event, someone with multiple income streams and tax optimization needs. The more complicated your financial life, the more likely an advisor's guidance pays for itself. That is genuinely true. The problem is that most households using advisors do not have complicated situations. They have a 401k, maybe a brokerage account, and a need for reassurance. Reassurance has value, but probably not 1% of your total net worth compounded annually for 3 decades. There are fee-only advisors who charge a flat rate or hourly fee rather than a percentage of assets. These eliminate the compounding cost problem entirely. A fee-only fiduciary charging $2,000 for a comprehensive financial plan is a very different proposition than an AUM advisor taking 1% forever. The NAPEFA directory lists fee-only advisors across the country. They are not always easy to find, but they exist, and they are not trying to accumulate assets under management. And then there is the do-it-yourself route. 3 index funds: domestic equities, international equities, bonds, rebalanced once a year. John Bogle, who founded Vanguard, spent 50 years making this argument. His thesis was that simplicity wins because simplicity minimizes costs and prevents the investor from their own worst decisions. His critique was not of advisors specifically, it was of the entire ecosystem that extracts fees from the gap between what the market returns and what the investor receives. That gap is real. The average investor's return consistently lags the average fund's return because people buy high and sell low. Advisors can help close that gap, but they can also widen it if their fees exceed the value they add. That is the calculation each person has to actually run. Here is a back-of-the-envelope test. Take your current portfolio value, multiply by your advisor's fee percentage. That is what you paid last year in dollar terms. Then ask, what did I get for that, specifically this year? Not in theory. This year, most people cannot answer that question, and that is not really their fault. The value is not always visible, but it is worth knowing whether you can, because here is what we have actually traced. $100,000 handed to an advisor, 1% leaves annually. It flows through the advisor's payout, the firm's overhead, the fund company's revenue share. Meanwhile, the funds inside the portfolio drain another full point. The compounding that would have happened on those 2 points does not happen. The portfolio that could have reached $700,000 reaches $400,000. The $300,000 gap, that is where your money went. Not stolen, not mismanaged in an obvious way, just slowly, quietly, redirected through a system you agreed to without fully pricing it. The industry is not villainous, but it is not neutral either. It is built to capture value from your portfolio over time. And the starting point of that whole chain, that 1% on your $100,000, sits differently now than it did at the beginning. $1,000 in year 1, $7,600 in loss compounding, multiplied across 30 years. The number on the other end of that math is the real price of the service. Whether it is worth that price depends entirely on what you are getting. The honest answer is most people do not know, and that might be the most expensive kind of not knowing there is.